Welcome back, everyone. I know it's been a little bit of a break. Work has been hectic for both of us. Took a vacation, but now we're back. We've got a lot to talk about. Welcome to the Star Wars Podcast. I'm your host, Day, joined by my co-host, Ian. Ian, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, sir.
Yeah.
Uh, I too understand the feeling of work and it being hectic. It has been an adventure, to say the least. How are you doing?
I enjoyed my vacation. I enjoyed the time off. I enjoyed the experience, I guess, with work being hectic because it's not been something that's happened to me recently, or it's been a while, and so like it was a good experience to have. Glad it's over.
Yeah. Yes.
Right off the bat, glad it's over.
Absolutely.
Or
Glad it's over.
at least, who knows? We'll see what happens when we're back in the office.
I mean, sure. And we've got a little bit. Plenty of
Yeah,
things can come up last minute, etc.
but just gonna enjoy this time while it lasts. And in that time, we've got a podcast to record. And so, we've kind of talked a little about. We've been like very kind of specific when it comes to our podcast topics. We talked about Jedi lightsaber colors and crystals and what do they mean. We talked about, Ahsoka Tano specifically. We had an entire podcast about her and whether she was canon or not. And now I want to go a little more broad, a little less kind of like, a little even like more so less or even less so detailed and factual. And I just wanted to talk about, are certain characters in Star Wars overrated? Do they deserve all the hype? Can they just be put on the back burner and be like, hey, we enjoyed you for the time being, but now we're done using you and, milking you dry, Disney?
Got him.
And so, I think the first thing that comes to mind definitely is going to be Boba Fett, one of the most iconic characters in all of Star Wars, one of the huge, fan favorites. He was in episodes 5 and 6. He was later added to A New Hope back when it was re-released in digitally remastered in I think 1997. He had like a small little cameo at Mos Eisley, and he had his origins kind of explained in the prequels. He was this clone of his father who was also a bounty hunter, and he kind of inherited his kind of hate for Jedi almost, and or his disdain for Jedi and the armor, of course, the iconic armor. He actually played a little bit of a role in the Star Wars Clone Wars TV show where we saw him kind of try to get back at specifically, I think it was Obi-Wan Kenobi, who. No, it was Mace Windu, sorry. It was Mace Windu, who he obviously attributes to his father's death because
Yeah.
obviously Mace killed Jango Fett.
we,
And I don't think he was in Star Wars Rebels because Rebels does take place before Episode 4, so there was a chance for him to be in it. Having not seen all of it, I can't confirm or deny, but I did not see any evidence saying that he was.
I I think this is a pretty big hot take.
Yeah.
Um, I think this is a good topic. This is a good starter topic. This is a good hot take, I think, for the people who potentially could be overrated, because obviously, you know, as you had mentioned, there's a lot of fanfare. There's a lot of opportunities where people have slipped them in or slipped him in,
Mm.
as like a contributing factor. And within the spoilers, if you haven't already seen it, go see it. Uh, Mandalorian Disney Plus show. Yeah, he's actually a bit of like a major player in the plot toward the end.
Mm.
Um, Not in the way that he's like a specific plot point that like progresses things along a certain track, but his contributions are like uh,
Are notable.
non-ignorable.
Yeah.
You know, my I think let's just be honest. We're gonna ruffle some feathers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it is okay to ruffle feathers just on the premise that there's like a bunch of different reasons why Boba Fett is like I think so popular. And to me it starts with how like when I was growing up, it wasn't with like I wasn't growing up in like the '60s. When I was growing up, the Star Wars franchise had like established itself and had a huge cult following, and all of the media that was revolving around Star Wars was like extended extra universe stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
comic books and novels.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't mainstream, and so anybody that liked Boba Fett liked him because he was both this really cool, like edgy bounty hunter badass guy, but also because he was kind of esoteric. Because if you liked him, it's because you went out of your way to like understand the universe and then learn about what Boba Fett really was. And so you'd see the like stickers of the Mandalorian symbol that he has
Mm-hmm.
on his his insignia. I shouldn't say the Mandalorian symbol. You know what I mean? His specific insignia. And you'd see like people dressing up at him as at Comic Con and whatever. And then they did the prequel trilogy, and we got to see a little bit of the backstory of what happened to Boba, and it set it kind of set all of that like powder for people that really like Boba Fett that had been like finally settled. It just it lit that shit up like a Roman candle. Whoop! I said shit. I apologize.
Well, yeah,
um,
it reignited that passion where it's like, oh, he's back. Like he's
right,
relevant again.
and in a, like for anybody that was anybody, oh, for those already a fan, like that was a pretty big deal to have like LucasArts say, "Hey guys, we haven't thought about or not thought about, we haven't seen your favorite character in a while, but check him out, he's still here." What? That's a pretty big deal. I think I think that Boba Fett, when you know about him a little bit, kind of deserves a little bit of the recognition that he gets, but that there is still an amount of attention that he gets. Um, Again, call it a hot take, call it a very dangerous hot take I'm making here. That isn't entirely indicative of the claim to fame that everybody else gives him, but only dependent on his timeline. Like where in the timeline you are experiencing Boba Fett, because quite frankly, while I think that old school Boba Fett may have been a little overhyped because old school Boba Fett was just a silent badass in a cool suit of armor.
Yeah, I literally have right here. He had 4 lines in Empire Strikes Back, and technically the joke is he had five because in Return of the Jedi he yelled "ah" when he fell into the Sarlacc pit.
It's a line. It's a line in a
It's
script.
it's a line.
I'm just saying, as I mentioned before, because of his contributions to the new plot, I think the newly returned to the franchise Boba, it's fucking badass. I like new Boba a lot, and I like the actor. I like the depiction. I like the entire show for the Mandalorian. Generally speaking, I'm already a fan of.
Mm.
I think that them bringing Boba Fett back into the Star Wars canon and in such a really cool niche way that let him really shine, let the actor really like just kind of show up and do his thing and look badass and be badass. I'm I was pretty into that, and I'd like to see a little bit more of this Boba. Cough. Incoming television series, maybe. Cough. What do you think about Boba Fett?
All right, so there's a couple of things you touched on. So I, as well, did not grow up with the extended universe that happened because the more I researched, the more I realized that between episode 6 and episode 1, the like extended universe like blew up. Like people were writing like fucking so many so many different books, comic books, like toys, TV shows. Like there was so much more than I had realized because I had only really grown up with the movies
Yeah,
and
it was.
only
It's
kind of
really weird. It's really weird to think about when you like look back at all that plastic that
yeah,
we used.
yeah.
It's
And I know, and like I know that in like the '90s it was when, at least in my mind, when like video games kind of started. So that's when, like in my mind, that's when the extended universe kind of started and kind of blew up more with episode 1, 2, and 3 because we see so much more of the universe in 1, 2, and 3 than in 4, 5, and 6. Like it's pretty like when you boil it all down to what's there, like 4, 5, and 6 are a pretty linear plot with some like hints at like an extended universe that we don't quite see there, but like
right,
obviously are available in other media and other platforms.
right.
So when I look at Boba, I look at 4, 5, and 6. I look 1, 2, and 3, and I'm just very underwhelmed, unfortunately, because
Mm-hmm.
he is just there. He doesn't have much of a character. Like he seems much more like a plot device for Han Solo than he does for his own character or his own contribution to this series. You know, his entire influence on the series is that he extends movie 5 into a sixth movie because he that's what it is. Like when you really like look at it and kind of like think about, okay, what has he done that influenced the actions of the characters? Well, he helped uh, trap Han Solo and put him in carbonite and deliver him to Jabba.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what else?
I mean, that ended up putting a whole lot of other stuff in motion, didn't it? Like,
It put other stuff in motion, but it's like he quote unquote dies shortly after. Obviously, it has not been canon that he actually survived until Mandalorian season 2. But like for all intents and purposes, he had died. He was there for one movie, then he died in the opening scene of the second movie, or of the second movie he was in.
mm-hmm.
And so it's like I look at that and I'm like, how do you enjoy this for beyond what is shown? Like I'm like, okay, like he kind of looks cool, cool armor, like he's there and he serves a purpose, but like when I in my mind I compare him to Darth Vader and I'm like, well, Darth Vader has better armor, more character, fucking just all around better in every aspect, and when that's because they're both like dark brooding characters. And yeah, I just sit there and I think, well, who I'd rather have, Darth Vader or Boba Fett? I'd rather have Darth Vader 10 out of 10.
All right. So hear me out,
Yeah.
right? I want to start this question off, with saying, I know we're both still friends. Okay, we're both still friends.
Okay.
I think, right. I don't disagree with like the idea of Boba Fett at like the peak of Boba Fett's. Um, I shouldn't say peak. Sorry, that's not what I'm looking for. Uh, at the phase of Boba Fett's like life cycle in the canon where um, he isn't a main player in like a specific splinter story, right? Like I can definitely get behind the like his entire story is that he was a clone and then was and then his father for some reason brought him to a big Coliseum machine world. I don't know, and then died because a Jedi killed him, and so he inherited some hatred, like some good old fashioned hatred plot, right? Like that's I get that, like were it not for it being Boba Fett, recognizable by name as he is,
Mm-hmm.
in any other case, I would probably also not be super enthused by that character. Like
Yeah.
notwithstanding the appeal that it has to also have like this referential content, this like legacy content get slipped back in. That's like a
Mm-hmm.
fan favorite. Hear me out.
Okay.
Explain to me the difference between Boba Fett, circa the time frame you have described, and Cad Bane.
Cad Bane. So you're referring to the blue bounty hunter in the Clone
Yes,
Wars
the very
TV
same.
series.
The Cad Bane himself. Go ahead. I'm interested in whether or not you feel that there's a difference there, because my
So
perspective of Cad Bane is that I also like Cad Bane, but I see a lot of parallels in Cad Bane's place, minus the missing volume of dialogue because Cad Bane actually has an entire episode dedicated to himself.
yeah.
That is like, I can see some parallels between your breakdown of how you feel about Boba Fett and Cad Bane. So like,
So
let the
I
gauntlet be thrown.
so I actually don't know much about Cad Bane.
Oh,
I only saw a few episodes in. I don't think I saw any type of backstory with him, or at least the episodes that I watched.
I see. Okay.
I don't think so, or at least none come to mind. For him is kind of like how I view Boba Fett. It's just kind of like I think they're cool character concepts, and I think they get the job done. But I watch, at least personally, I watch Star Wars for the Force users. I'm not a huge sci-fi guy. Like Star Wars is a fantasy, and I want to watch the magic. I want to watch the chosen one or the Lord of the Sith or whatever, you know, battle it out. And every other character, like, I can enjoy more so or less so, and they just kind of fall in that category of like, okay, like they're there and they do their thing, and then I'm gonna go right back to, okay, well, where is Luke Skywalker? Where's Darth Vader? Where is Anakin? So,
I
unfortunately, that's where I fall. But I think that's more so
Sure.
kind of like with Boba Fett's extended universe, is that I am not very knowledgeable, or yeah, should be more knowledgeable than what we're talking. But you know what? Whatever. We have the podcast, so we can just kind of talk whatever we want.
I rescind the throwing of my gauntlet and would like to just reiterate for anybody else listening that Cad Bane is great. Please don't come after me. Um, no, I think that's fair, right? Like, I I present Cad Bane as a potential analogy because he is a similarly kind of one-dimensional person. Admittedly, even though he's a badass, right? Even though I like Cad Bane as who he is, Cad Bane is like his entire jam is that he shows up and is the bounty hunter that is so cool that nobody can really stop him. And then if they do,
Mm-hmm.
it's because they got lucky, and that's it, right? Like he's just another one of those kind of archetypal powerhouses of the extended universe in like non-force sensitive form. Um, he has a little bit of extra coverage on his own, right? So like he does show up and like has special appearances. He has special dialogue. He has like relationships with people that like establishes that he's more part of the world than just like a one-off bad guy. But like if you sat down and like examined the substance of what he was saying, it doesn't mean that he's like he's not a particularly complex
Mm-hmm.
character,
Yeah. Yeah.
but anyway, I you get around to it. You get around to it. You should watch a little bit of that their media. Tell me about your Cad Bane feelings.
Yeah. Probably put that on the list of things right now. I'm obviously still going through Bad Batch, but that's another podcast episode. Um,
Yes. Soon.
but yeah, so as though I am not very knowledgeable with Cad Bane, I am a little more knowledgeable with Boba Fett, and one of the reasons that I have a hard time kind of getting behind him is that his own backstory and his own lore and his version of canon has also kind of been up in the air since his appearance. And so what one of the reasons that I think everyone kind of went crazy for him was that he was the introduction to Mandalorians. You know, it's like this really cool set of armor that wasn't just unique but was kind of spread about, you know, to different types of warriors. Like the race, I think is a very kind of interesting kind of addition to Star Wars because it doesn't feel very Star Warsy, but it does at the same time. Like it has this, it's a great like contrast to like what other kind of sci-fi's do, but having it in this fantasy world. And so I think it's just a really cool, you know, addition to the universe. He, you know, everyone either, I don't remember if it was confirmed or if it was just kind of like people making their own extended universe kind of go and say that he's a Mandalorian and here's the Mandalorian backstory. But then that gets changed because obviously he was a clone of Jango Fett, and so whatever Jango Fett was is what Boba Fett is.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Clone Wars, oh god, I can't think of the character's name right now, but it was announced that Jango Fett was not Mandalorian by birth. He is not he's not of the Mandalorian race. He's a thief who stole Mandalorian armor and dishonors Mandalore by wearing it and by being a bounty hunter because they think that's like not, you know, that's not very honorable. And of course that is, you know, handed down to Boba Fett, and so by that canon he's not Mandalorian, and that takes a huge part of his character, his extended character, away that people, you know, built up and are in like about him. But even then, and I think this was just Disney, you know, giving fan service and also kind of like splitting the difference, was that in the Mandalorian TV show, obviously the Mandalorian calls him out saying that you are not Mandalorian, you do not deserve that armor. And he shows like the chain code or something, or whatever weird code that's in the armor, I guess,
Yeah, yeah.
that Jango Fett was a foundling.
Mm-hmm.
And so that actually kind of is a like nuanced response on how to bring that enthusiasm and that, you know, just innate badassery of being of Mandalore back to Boba Fett without kind of arguing with themselves, because like of the true Mandalorians, they only believe that people who are born of Mandalore or Mandalorians, they don't believe in the foundling way, but there is a small kind of like cultist sect that does, and that's what the Mandalorian is. And so like that's the 50-50 split that I think Disney actually kind of like graces through. Like you can see it, but they kind of do it in a way that like it doesn't piss anyone off and just kind of makes everyone happy. And but then they make Book of Boba, and then that's straight just being like, oh, we can make money off this. Now that we've like done it in a way that people that now that we brought Boba back in a way that aren't going to piss people off, now we can really just milk this for all it's worth. And who better to play Boba Fett than, I'm gonna pronounce his name wrong, I'm sorry, Tamura Morrison, who is the original actor for Jango Fett. He played all of the clones in like the Clone Wars, and he's voiced Boba Fett a couple of times. I think they remastered either a video game or like episode 5, and he redubbed the lines for Boba Fett, and he just looks he's an exact clone of Jango Fett, so why wouldn't he look exactly the same, except he's just a little bit older now. And I think Disney's just kind of setting this up to just really be a moneymaker, but also it's gonna please the fans. And I just kind of like I disagree with him surviving the Sarlacc pit, especially because George Lucas back in the olden days said that Boba Fett does not survive the Sarlacc pit. I can't really. I have a hard time getting behind a character that, when the canon really heavily pushes them, not because it makes sense, but because they can make money off it, it really just doesn't. It doesn't help me understand or really like the character. So, unfortunately, I am of the opinion that Boba Fett is a little overrated. I think he could have been done where he wasn't, but unfortunately, especially with the addition of Disney, that's just kind of where I sit. Are are you taking the politician's answer, the 50-50, or are you gonna land firmly on one side or another?
I am on the side of Boba Fett. Right, so look at final answer. To the question: is Boba Fett overrated? I'm gonna land on the side of no. I don't think that he's
Hmm.
overrated.
Okay.
Um, I think that companies making cash grabs have never stopped companies from making cash grabs, and companies making cash grabs, because they've never been stopped by companies making cash grabs, have also never been stopped from making good media in an attempt to make that
Hmm.
cash grab. If it ends
It
up
is.
sucking, we'll call it a cash grab, because that's just how the language is formed, right? Rather than saying that it was a poor business investment or that it was somebody specific, whatever. It's gonna it's gonna come down to somebody saying, "Oh, it's just a cash grab," and it's gonna get swept under the rug, and everybody's idealistic view of our beautiful baby clone boy isn't going to change, and that's it. We'll be free. We will be free of the anxiety of it being a terrible piece of
It's like
media.
60
If it
years
turns
old.
out that it's actually great, is it a cash grab? Would it be? I mean,
Is it a cash
I don't.
grab? Yes, but it's a good cash grab. Like that's yeah.
Right. So,
I
like,
guess to be
what if it is?
to be fair,
I think I think it's about time that we saw a little bit of Boba. I think that if we see Boba come out the gate swinging, and this next show comes out and it's a cash grab, but it's still better than nothing, then like, hell
yeah,
yeah, I'm down.
they have to. They really have to hit like episode 1 and 2, because they, again, like, although I'm not happy how they got there, I am happy with what they did with Boba Fett in the end of Mandalorian season 2. And if they don't come out with that presence, that just like Tamura Morrison just being like, I am here, deal with it, then I think it's gonna split the fan base very heavily. But if they nail it, then obviously you can't argue with them nailing it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I don't think he is. I
Well.
don't think he's overrated.
Yeah.
I don't think that you're wrong for having any of the opinions you do. I'm just saying that, like,
That's
I
the
see
point
this
of
as
this
an
episode.
opportunity for Boba to come back.
The episode is for one person to yell, "You're wrong," and we just get into it.
All
So
right. Well, Uh,
Yeah, let's try a different character then, shall
right.
we?
We've
So we
agreed.
don't think
We,
Boba
we've
Fett.
we've agreed to disagree.
Yeah,
We've come to the head.
we're too logical for this. Why can't we?
It's
We
logical.
when we talk at work, it's not logical at all. We just yell at each other. When we sit down for a podcast, we're like, yes, well, this take is, or my opinions are.
It's
Well
just
said.
saying.
All right, all right. So moving on to the next character we have down the list. We're gonna be a little bit shorter because there's a little less context to him. It's gonna be Mace Windu.
Ugh.
Mace Windu, portrayed by Samuel L. Jackson, just straight off gonna be a badass. Like you can't have Samuel L. Jackson and not have a badass character who's gonna have a presence, who's going to just be there and just like steal the show in basically any scene he's in. All right. So you know Mace Windu is a force to be reckoned with. He takes on and seemingly beats Darth Sidious, basically one on one. Shows up for a 4v1, ends up in 1v1 and winning it. Of course, there's some like canon like Darth Sidious allowed him to win. Some say otherwise, but looking in the movie, you see him win. Okay, so that to that point, you cannot argue. He was the first person to have a unique lightsaber color, a purple lightsaber, and just bam, he's there. Episodes 1, 2, and 3. Bam, and he has huge influence on the Jedi Council, on the role of the role of the Jedi in the Clone Wars, in Anakin's development and ultimate fall to the dark side. So he's got a lot of things going for him. Some of the things that I start to look into and I start to have my hesitation about is like why is a purple lightsaber? Obviously, we've talked about it. Excuse me, in the lightsaber episode that it was more of a production issue. Samuel L. Jackson's favorite color is purple, and he was talking to George Lucas, and he's like, I like purple, and George Lucas is like, all right, we'll get you a purple lightsaber. But then
Mm-hmm.
the extended universe kind of ruins it for me, where they're like, okay, well, he had to have, well, mixed between purple is, blue and red, so he had to have some light and some dark, so he had to study the dark side at some point, which I think is really dumb because you think of the Jedi teachings, especially with the Republic in episode 1, 2, and 3, that there was absolutely taboo. You don't do it. Like you had to be pure. You had to transcend this, and it doesn't make sense for someone, especially so high on the Jedi Council, to have done that and not be ostracized. And then there's his like unique or almost unique because there's a few characters that have it force ability called Shatterpoint, which I looked into and I still can't tell you what it's about because it's really fucking confusing. There's the weird like okay I can take the dark side. No, sorry, that's Vapod. Okay, sorry, that's Vapod where it's his lightsaber form where he takes the darkness in himself. He takes the darkness of who he's fighting and turns it in onto the person he's fighting. Sure, yeah, I guess that happens in episode 3. Whatever. Just more stuff where like the more you explain it, the less I buy it. And then Shatterpoint where it's like this weird thing where he can see these fractures in time where it's like kind of in the future, but it's more so these different realities that he can see how things happen and influence them. And a lot of time it's like, okay, well it's like this unbreakable thing, but this one reality it's breakable, so I break it there and it breaks in my reality. Something. I don't know. Again, the more I look into it, the less I know about it and the more confused I am.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also he's a huge force to be reckoned with in the Clone Wars TV show. And, oh, I forgot to write this down in my notes. He also is the one responsible for why General Grievous has a cough, is because when he kidnaps Chancellor Palpatine, right before Grievous gets away, he uses the Force to crush, I guess, the metallic rib cage of Grievous. And so that's why Grievous has that cough, is because his biological components are being crushed in by his own suit. And that is, you can argue canon, argue not canon, but that's of like the 2003 Clone Wars animated shorts.
Right.
So, Mace
So,
Windu.
I'm getting the impression you feel that Mace Windu is overrated.
A little bit. A little bit. Like, if you gave me Mace Windu in episodes 1, 2, and 3, and that was it, like maybe a little bit of the 2003 Clone Wars, yeah, okay, fine. I don't think he's overrated. I think he's like a really cool character. It's Samuel Jackson. Let's go. But then they try to explain things, and it's like explaining a joke. The more you explain it, the less funny it is. And that's where everyone loses me.
Got it. Okay, so it isn't about Samuel L. Jackson and the animated shorts and all the different depictions of Mace Windu the character. It's not Mace Windu's like sum total character
No.
that gets you like
No.
makes you feel like he's a little. It's specifically that like as time goes on, there's less and less stuff that you feel like you can buy into because it just like it's no longer just it's no longer the cool badass Mace Windu guy. It's now like this drawn out. Oh, he's also super powerful because of this reason, and oh, and he's also super powerful because of this reason, and oh, he's just so cool, and like
Yeah. Yeah,
there's
it's
not like
it's
a whole lot of strong writing behind why those things are the case. So it's like it's hard to be convinced.
it's the fan fiction that gets me.
Yeah. Okay. Okay,
And
that's interesting.
yeah, well, where do you
I
stand?
kind of, I understand what you mean, and I think I can agree with the idea that, um, I guess the fan fiction, as it were, is a little eh. Like I already don't really, uh, it's hard to write. It's hard to write for anything. It's hard to write for
Mm-hmm.
professionally for a show, for books, whatever. I'm trying to cut people some slack that like to do this thing because they like to have fun. If you out there in the real world, you do fan fiction or you just write about a thing that you're particularly passionate about, like a universe or whatever, fucking do your thing, man. Like I've got little small side projects I've stewed around my brain similarly for a long time that I've always wanted to do, and like
Mm-hmm.
I think it's awesome. Like go for it. Don't let me be
Yeah, no,
the
sorry,
the
I'm
the
not. I'm not
the
saying
one
any
who
of.
that tells you not to do the thing. What I want to say is that I don't check into that stuff, right? Like I tend to read it or I tend to listen to it, and I'm like, it's not. It's not as interesting an idea. This is clearly just somebody trying to like live out some kind of a power fantasy through this character and whatever. Extended universe shows can do that. Extended universe content can do that, and for sure, just based on how well it's written. I have read my fair share of Warhammer 40K novels, and not all of them are great. I'll tell you that right now. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, I, like back to whether or not Mace Windu himself is like overrated. I'm going to agree that some of the external universe, or yeah, some of the external universe stuff about like the justification for all these cool superpowers he can do is like that. Yeah, that's kind of boring. But
Mm-hmm.
when you don't take that into stock, right? When you specifically look at canon, and you look at what Mace Windu is supposed to do, just within, for the story, just within the context of what he actually contributed to, what like changed about the Star Wars universe in response to Mace Windu's actions. Like in one way or another, he's he's kind of a fucking badass. Like
Yeah.
there are canonical, there are established levels of proficiency and like power and mastery over the Force that we've seen represented through all kinds of different Jedi. But Mace Windu, some I presume human, he may not be a human. I don't know if he's just like one of those humanoid races that looks just like a human.
Yeah.
Um,
They're rampant in Star Wars.
Mace Windu is like he showed up for a 4v1 and took and one-on-1v1 Sidious.
Mm-hmm.
He he shows up in the middle of a battlefield at a manufacturing compound for drones, for droids. And against the newest model of droid that were being
Mm-hmm.
manufactured that had been only produced in like were about to be unleashed. This guy just gets up and is like, cool, heavy artillery, neat, and then just dances through those fools like
Mm-hmm.
Mace Windu. If this is a person we're talking with the canonic ability to look through universes, even at an intuitive level, though most Jedi can kind of already do that thing where they are somewhat precognizant because of how they perceive things through the Force.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this guy arguably had the potential to be one of the wisest Jedi Masters on the Council if he were to hone that ability long enough. Like, foresight, literal foresight. It's pretty rad. Like I think he's not as bad as like a Superman, where there's like no personality and he's just kind of there to fill a role.
Mm-hmm.
Or worse yet, when his role is that he's so powerful that it's like that it hinders them. That kind of stuff bugs me.
Yeah,
Mace Windu,
absolutely.
to me, is like an example of how Jedi aren't just like nameless, faceless, badass force wielders, as we are wont to see. Mace Windu has enough development and enough character, the way that Samuel L. Jackson depicted him, and the way that he's depicted in the animated shorts. Uh, or sorry, I shouldn't say the animated shorts. Not just Gendy Tartakovsky's stuff. I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about like the Clone Wars and whatnot. Um, he shows that there is like a bar, right? Like Obi-Wan Kenobi, Qui-Gon Jinn,
Yoda.
Yoda, right? Like this guy is like dancing with the best of the best, and he's like everybody talks about Mace Windu, and they're like, "Yo, that's fucking Mace Windu. Don't fuck with Mace Windu." Right? Like
Yeah.
that fucking means something, you know? Like if
Mm-hmm.
there's a world that's established where everything is completely rational, everything presumably is like just it's realistic and we take whatever's there at face value. We got to look at this guy and like I think we've got to appreciate that Mace Windu's like kind of a badass.
So, yes. So I guess first off, you said something a little while ago. I do want to say like I don't want to discourage people from writing fan fiction or writing in general because like I myself am also trying to make it as a writer. So like, and I have my own stories and I have my own kind of like headcanon that I enjoy. So keep doing that. Don't be dissuaded to do that, and don't be dissuaded if people tell you not to do that. But it's when it's tried to kind of when people try to not push it on me but trying to tell me about it, I'm like, okay, that's kind of okay, not for me. And so when it kind of becomes
Right.
canon, I'm like, well, I don't want it to be canon.
Yeah.
Like, is it really canon? It's not for me. So that's kind of
Right.
where I fall on that. But I think where Mace Windu really strives is not his weird, unique powers and his ability to fight Sith, even though Sith haven't existed for 1,000 years, and he knows how to use the dark side against some people. I don't, whatever. Some plot holes there. It's that he is a counterpart to Yoda. So
Hmm.
Yoda is this aged, wizened, character who sits and meditates on the Force, and when in like what I think Yoda's interpretation of what like no emotion is that peace, is that serenity, is that like no, like almost like no thoughts really, like no emotions, no thoughts. Whereas it seems like Mace Windu's interpretation of no emotions is to block it out by maybe not one emotion, but there's like something, and I'm just like lacking the word there because you think about it, and when they're talking about how they learn that the Sith have control over the Senate already, Yoda's like, well, we need to figure out who, and Mace Windu's like, I want to play chess with this guy. Like he thinks he can make this move and call this bluff. I'm going to call his bluff, and we're going to do this. And even like his way of dealing with Palpatine is not so much different. Is that he doesn't really like Anakin. He doesn't like the favoritism Anakin has been shown. He doesn't like how close he is. And he doesn't like how Palpatine thinks that he can influence the Jedi Council. It's the same thing where he's like, I want to be aggressively playing chess with this guy. And it shows in two scenes where he's like, all right, the Supreme Chancellor has said that you're going to be on the council, so you're going to be on the council, but we're not going to grant you uh, the rank of master.
Right.
Anakin's like, wait, I don't get that, and he goes, "Take a seat, young Skywalker." And then they continue with the conversation. Like that's a powerful moment because like that's you know like even though he is at that kind of no emotion, you could say he's kind of teetering on in kind of like anger or hate or frustration or whatever you want to call it. that's how he like blocks out like other emotions, I think, and other attachments, and that's how why he's a Jedi. And another one is when he he learns and Anakin comes to him, and Anakin's like, I found out that he's the Palpatine's the Sith. He's the Sith that's controlling everyone that we need to defeat. And he's like, our worst fears have been realized. I need to go kill him, pretty much. And Anakin's like, no, I want to help. And he's like, I don't trust you. And like that's like you trusted him to be a double spy, a double agent. You trusted him to give you this information, and you took him at his word like immediately. But you don't trust him to come. It's just like the movie. I think just the movies themselves did perfect with Mace Windu. He didn't need more than that. But when people added more, that's when I'm get like, okay, I'm this character kind of
Sure.
a little overrated. So I think that's where.
So final verdict.
Yeah.
Mace Windu plus or minus the amount of external content? Question mark? Overrated?
Yeah, I mean, I fall on both sides. I think if you look at episodes 1, 2, and 3, and any Clone Wars that has been deemed, canon, I guess technically Shatterpoint is in the Clone Wars TV show, but like the Clone Wars TV show or the 2003 Clone Wars, like I think they did fine. I don't like. I like him. He did great. He influences the story. He's amazing character. He has relationships with people. Kind of some of the things that you were saying about Boba Fett. But like that's all I need from him. I don't need anything more. And so when I start reading more into him, I'm like this stuff, like I guess kind of lines up, but not. It's not hitting the right notes for me, and that's where I kind of get lost. That's where I think it's a little overrated.
I definitely think that walking into this conversation, I would have said Mace Windu is not, and I would have just left it there. Understanding, of course, that there are a few things that are like, yeah, maybe I'm not actually super sold on like the way that the non-canonic writing has depicted Mace Windu. Yeah, okay, I guess I can see that. Like, I accept an orthodox Mace Windu in my house only, and that is final.
Guess that's fair.
Like I think you make a few good points. I think that it's hard to judge, for me anyway, a character in relation to its like external content.
But that's hold on, no. I'm gonna argue this. That's what Boba Fett is. No. That's what Boba Fett is.
I know,
Okay.
and I know that I literally had just said, right,
Okay.
that like a lot of what made Boba Fett originally super cool was that everybody had to like dig into his stuff, right, and that like his contributions to the story are all non like main canon. They're all like side stories. It's all extended universe stuff. But the key difference there is that, like, Mace Windu didn't become a freaking badass because of fan fiction. He became a badass because he was the esoteric secret guy. Like...
Yeah.
Wait, did I say Mace Windu? I meant to say Boba.
Yes, you did.
I knew it! Aha, I said the wrong thing. I meant to say Boba Fett.
Okay.
Anyway,
Okay,
listen here, you. All right.
Yes.
I'm a no. I don't think Mace Windu is overrated.
Okay.
I don't think Mace Windu is. Who else we got?
All right.
Bring forth the next fool.
All right. Before we move on, I'm gonna have you try to read into Shatterpoint and then explain it to me, and you tell me after that if he's overrated or not. Okay. Moving on. So we've kind of spent some time kind of delving a little bit into Boba Fett and Mace Windu. I kind of want to go a little bit faster paced with these next couple that we have, because I think it's like. Like we can get kind of factual and kind of break it down, but like the point of this is like, first response emotions. Let's go. Let's argue. Let's talk about it, and then move on. Instead of like, well, let's sit there and break down because in episode 1, 2, and 3, So, running forward, full sprint forward. Another fan favorite, obviously, is going to be Darth Maul, who was originally in only one movie. You cannot argue anything different. He was in one fucking movie. He had no real lines. He had no real character depth. He was just a pawn of his master to just be like, we've introduced the Sith back into whatever. I will say, however, he elevated lightsaber combat in the movies. Like
I know.
the
Oh,
like
fuck.
technological and cinematic whatever like restraints of the era that the original trilogy were in. You saw lightsabers, you didn't see their potential. You saw it. Like there was in I think the choreographer created a whole new type of swordplay to really show off what lightsabers can do. That's amazing. He's the first one that we see that isn't a single blade of the entire fucking series. You see, everyone just uses one single lightsaber. He had a double-sided lightsaber, bitch. He took
This
on two
motherfucker,
Jedi, bitch.
this
Like
motherfucker comes swinging, man.
exactly. You kind of see him in his first duel with Qui-Gon Jinn. You're like, okay, whatever. That scene in the Naboo like hangars when the door opens and he just pulls it out and it ignites on both sides. That's an oh shit moment. That is a shit's
Yeah.
about to get real. And then like
The soundtrack
da
kicks
da da
in.
da 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 kicks in. Yeah. Oh yeah. So
All
but
right.
like but like but like
Another-
that's hold on.
Recollect ourselves.
We
recollect
get
ourselves.
into that. No, that's where I want us to be. That's where I want us to be.
Yeah.
But that's it. He's only in one movie. Okay, he did great in that one movie. I don't care about anything else. I never at one point in my life thought I want to see more Darth Maul. I was like, he was good in episode 1. That was it. Few last things. And this is where I'm pointing that. So he was the 1st hit that we saw that wasn't Vader or Emperor. So he was the first one to be introduced. That kind of brings a level of like oh shitness to it, you know. But like he's the main villain. So he's in scene 1 in episode 1, he's cut in fucking half, guys, and falls down a bottomless pit. Cannot stress that enough. He shows up with robot spider legs in Clone Wars. He becomes like a criminal overlord of Mandalore and then of the Crimson Dawn later. He, you know, is influential. It has like run-ins with other Sith and Sith apprentice and assassins and whatever. He's the main like villain in Rebels. He's makes appearance in Solo. They allude that he's going to be in more. I'm done with this character. Okay, I was done with him in episode 1. I liked him in scene. Finn, no more. Moving on. And then they're like, we can milk this for over a decade. And they did that. And instantly, I'm like, I don't fucking care.
Right. No. Okay.
Where are you?
I'm gonna be okay. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Darth Maul.
Scene 1,
Me,
dusk on the
Ian.
moon.
Ian, right? The Ian, formative Ian, finds the most badass fucking looking Jedi character that has ever been made to date, according to my impudent little mind.
Adolescent imagination.
And I love the shit out of this guy. For the longest time, Darth Maul was to me the visual representation of the dark side. Because
That's true.
I'm just saying, like, Darth Vader is
He's-
cool, but
yeah.
the increase in technology and knowledge about how to do makeup and
He's
the,
got
like,
horns. He's
got
literally red and black. He's got
he's fucking
like
dual
gnarly teeth.
lightsaber.
Dual
Right, like,
lightsaber. Yeah.
This man, and then he comes out, not only does he come out looking like a badass, the actor that they had do all of the combat, the stunts, the performance, right? The guy that like you can still go and shake the hands of at like conventions. This guy comes out saying, "I know that you guys are pretty used to seeing Jedi and Sith, and they fight with lightsabers, but just kind of standing and two-planted feet and kind of like going pew pew and whacking it. I'm gonna do a side flip. I'm gonna spin this shit. I'm gonna battle two guys who are in front and behind this guy.
I'm gonna force push someone in the middle of a duel. I don't think that's ever seen before.
He's so cool. And
Yeah.
then they kill him, and I'm like, okay, maybe that isn't the best way for him to have died, right? Just like a quick front flip and then whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not. All right, that's fine. There are worse deaths in the Star Wars universe. When they next bring him back, and they start alluding to him being around, specifically what I'm talking about is like when they do so next, I think, in the timeline, I could be wrong.
This would be
during Clone Wars.
Clone Wars when Savage goes and hunts for his older brother, which we think is Darth Maul, but I don't think is confirmed until obviously we see him.
Yes, correct. Spoilers. Go watch it. The
From 8 years ago.
when it's hinted at, I remember thinking, oh, that's kind of cool. because after the movies had come out, some extended fiction had been written that had explained that Darth Maul, in fact, did survive, and that he sustained himself through his connection with the Force by becoming like an untamed rage beast, basically. Supposedly, Sidious had something to do with it. I don't know. It was never really well supported after that, and I just kind of checked out. I think that when not Sidious, when Maul was hinted at in Clone Wars, they had the potential to make him really cool, and then my interest in Maul kind of petered out with the way that the Clone Wars series panned out. And by that, what I mean is that like I get the whole criminal underlord thing. I get the whole like him and Savage out there taking on the universe, trying to be the best Sith they can be, living their truth. But like, it just they kind of they spoon fed a lot, but to both of those guys, like they just kind of kept putting them in places where they were like, these are the bad guys, you should take them seriously, and they didn't really give them a lot of substance. So I think that like using my established criteria of judging whether or not the folk is overrated, the contribution that Maul had to the story as like a presence, right? Phenomenal, loved it, and then the execution later on down the line just didn't quite land. I feel like they kind of let your man down, and I feel like he has become a little overrated to me. If they wanted to bring him back in some way, even though they've basically closed his life cycle in extended canon due to all of the rest of the writing they've done with him, if they wanted to bring him back, then like they would really have to find a way to successfully retcon the like hasty deployment of story that they gave him in the latter half of his life.
Well, I just meh. All right, so first off, it's the Boba Fett conundrum. He died. We saw him die, but he somehow survives. Blah.
Yeah.
All right, I hate that. But anyway, so kind of what you're talking about is because you haven't seen Rebels. He's canonically died, so they can't do anything past this. They have to either undo his death, which is a Disney show, so they're going to either undo themselves or they're going to have to go back at some point in between these times that we see him and do more, which unfortunately I think what Solo was hinting at was that they were going to do that, because after he escapes in the Clone Wars TV show, we know that at some point he rises to prominence as like the leader or one of the main people of the Crimson Dawn, which then Kira is the informant of, or some shit or something like that. And then at some point he ends up on is it Malachir 5? I don't remember. There's some Sith homeworld back in like the Old Republic where Sith used to train, and he gets abandoned there. Like his ship crashed and he's like stuck there, like feeding off the Force until the characters of the Rebels go there and they find him, and he tries to make the Jedi Padawan his apprentice, and then continues to try to make him his apprentice for the next 3 seasons, and then eventually, in his plot, his entire life story is to go after Obi-Wan Kenobi. He didn't really do that too much in the Clone Wars, so I don't know why it's suddenly his life mission in Rebels to go and kill Kenobi, who seemingly killed him. That's a weird change of character there. And then he goes and gets killed by older, 40s or 50s, Obi-Wan. Okay. Yeah.
Got him.
Thanks for having that character in. Really, really added a lot, You had Thrawn. Yeah. Thrawn was okay as a villain. Let's throw in Darth Maul. He hasn't been overdone enough. Whatever. Ugh, final verdict.
Okay.
A little overrated. I just see too much of him.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the bottom line. Is like there's too much of him, and they could easily show more of him, and I just don't want it at all in the slightest.
Sure.
All right, moving on. I hope you're a little more emotionally charged from this, is because it's going to be Rey and Kylo Ren. Are they overrated or are they not? Because I swear to fucking Christ, they are. So
overrated.
Specifically Kylo Ren. And I'm not talking about Ben Solo. Ben Solo's a pussy. I'm talking about Kylo Ren, all right? So they only exist in the Disney movies. They're incredibly Force-sensitive people for no discernible reason. Like, I guess technically because he's the grandson of Anakin Skywalker, but then we already had that with the son of Anakin Skywalker, Luke Skywalker. Sure, he's incredibly strong. Rey at the first two movies don't know what the fuck. Okay, she's just an orphan in the desert. She's Luke Skywalker, but didn't have that connection to Darth Vader. Sure, she's strong. Oh, she gets trained by Leia. Oh, she can force heal suddenly. Oh, she's the granddaughter of Palpatine. Sure, that makes fucking sense. They're both trained by a grouchy old Luke Skywalker. Fucking Kylo just. I don't. Just. Kylo, the entire trilogy, is just an angsty, angry teenager. And he has no real fucking depth. He's just a Vader wannabe. Which I have issue with that to begin with. So he was taught, most likely by Leia, and I don't know why he wouldn't be taught by Leia, that Vader was his grandfather, all right, Anakin Skywalker. And he knows that. But why doesn't he know or ever allude to knowing that Vader was good at one point in his life when he was Anakin Skywalker, became Vader because he was seduced by bad things, and then, I don't know, was purified, was resolved of his terrible actions by becoming Anakin again at his death for saving Luke Skywalker. Why the fuck isn't he knowledgeable of that information? It doesn't make sense. And then just Rey's there hanging out, has no Force training, and can suddenly go into Kylo Ren's mind in Episode 4 and, force interrogate her, and force interrogate him when he's trying to do it to her. He's had training by Luke Skywalker and by Snoke, who we later learn is a clone of Palpatine. Like, why wouldn't he be stronger than her? Who knows? Like, I just don't like the sequels. I don't like the characters. I'm sorry. As movies, I enjoyed them. As movies, I enjoyed them. As characters, is it going to be in the comic section? Just as movies, if I sat there and be like, okay, they're movies, yeah, like they were Star Wars, I guess I enjoyed them. But as I look there, if I look any harder into it or try to break it down, I don't like it. I just don't.
All right.
Where are you? You're too logical for this.
No,
Where's the
fine.
anger? Where's the passion?
Let's listen.
Yes.
Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
Kylo Ren is the victim. He's not the criminal. I think that Kylo Ren is a victim. You hear me, Liz? You ready for this Star Wars fan base universe of terrible writing? What I mean by that is that, like, when they start out the gate where they're like, here's this guy who's like, I idealize this idea of what Darth Vader is. There's this thing that has been happening to Disney and Marvel and DC and Lionsgate and fucking name the movie. This dude, for the last 2 decades, this thing has been happening where the way that movies are directed and written, there isn't a single pause between any point in dialogue, and dialogue is not executed very often with intentionality. There's this very frenetic direction style because people who are making these movies, I guess, assume that their audience are idiots. Like, I watch when Kylo Ren first shows up, I think there's a ton of potential. I think that Adam Driver did a great job. I think that the movie was a little shaky, but they were trying to do a lot in a very limited amount of time, and they had a lot of expectations riding on them. Like, I get it. I get it. Writing is hard. Making a movie this big, for this big of a franchise, is hard. But, at any time, they could have sat down and tried to explain more or shown more about the character of Kylo Ren and about Rey. They could have sat down and said, here's how the Force manifests through your beliefs, and your internal state of mind impacts, and how the Force impacts the world around you when your internal state of mind is out of balance, right? There's an assumption in the movies that people can read between the lines and just kind of know that the Force is a philosophical thing as much as a magic space power. But
Yeah.
the problem is that it has been decades
Yeah.
since the fucking Star Wars universe came out. Nobody preserved any of the cool philosophy, any of the like understanding that whoever it was that was writing the script for fucking Kylo would have already known. Because when I watched Kylo Ren, right? So this first his first appearance is
His
in the series.
Yeah, so hold on,
I watched this character and I'm listening to him and like I understand who he is and what he is going through. He's not just trying to be a whiny crybaby. He is like conflicted with the philosophical ethical dilemma of what the good and what the light and the dark side of the force are, and what he wants from the world and how he sees the world. And he is idealizing this idea of his past representative of a power figure, of an authority figure that has what he wants, right? Like he sees Darth Vader and doesn't see Darth Vader the tortured Anakin Skywalker. He sees Darth Vader with the same way that like, you know, we in the US like to look at the old like the 60s and 70s as like this through like rose-colored glass. They weren't. The 60s and 70s, the 50s and 40s, they were awful. But there's like still this retro nostalgia feel, right? This guy has a clearly flawed sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Kylo has a lot of potential. I don't think he should be overrated. And I think that if there was any decent writing and direction, cough, behind how they executed Kylo Ren and Rey's relationship as characters, they could have made those people remarkably deep and interesting. I think that they could have done a lot for Force wielders in the Star Wars universe, and they just fell short because they didn't know how to communicate to the layman what a non-Western philosophy was going to look like in this like pseudo-spiritualistic connection to all of everything literally. Like oh man, I got feelings about this one. Is Kylo
Good. Bring
Ren
him
my
out. Let's
answer?
go.
Is Kylo Ren overrated? I don't think so. And the reason I don't think that he's overrated is that
you don't hate the sequels like I do. So
I don't think he's overrated because I think that the way they've shown him is overrated, which means I think he's overrated.
Yeah.
But he also, I think, to be entirely honest, he's not overrated because he got the rating that he should have had. The fucking writers and the directors of that movie put Adam Driver into a slot where they were like, Adam Driver, sorry. Excuse me. I'm losing control. I'm losing myself in the moment. Adam Driver, they're like, here, do this thing. Be this cool guy. Be this really cool, intense, emotional character. Channel that. Like, channel this character for us. And Adam Driver was like, cool. And chances are, after they got onto the set, whoever it was that had this vision in their head about how to make that happen, just guy, come on.
Okay. So you explaining that kind of makes a little more sense to me. But here's my thing with him, though, is where I get stuck and hung up on is if he was the first character to do this, okay. But he's not. Because you look at Anakin. Hold on. You look at Anakin, who has 3 movies solely around him about conflicting what the light and the dark side is. Like less so about what the light and dark side is, or is the light side the right side, is really what that is about. Because he's taught, like, okay, the light side is good. But the more time he spends, the 15 years he is from becoming a Padawan to, episode 3, when he, like, has that full, like, confrontation of, like, I need to make a decision, I need to make it now, is, like, there's so much, like, nuance and kind of, like, growth to it that is shown and could be shown maybe a little bit better, but also is there, though. His really isn't. Like, it's not really explicitly stated or even, like, kind of shown. Like, it's shown in the sense that, like, you can look at it and you can discern, okay, this is what his character arc is. But then they take it and they're like, oh, but his connection with Rey. Oh, but it's not romantic. Oh, but he's the I don't know. He like overthrows Snoke or something. So he's good, but he's bad. But he's good, but he's bad. But ultimately he's good, and then he dies. Like it's I don't know. Like him killing his dad make no fucking sense. Him being betrayed by Luke, him turning to the dark side because he like what he was being taught obviously almost killed him, like I get that. But him then being like, "Oh, I need to kill my dad," who has done nothing wrong by him, by the way. That doesn't make sense. And then
Okay,
even
so,
all
so
of
hang on.
yes,
Hang on.
yes.
Hang on a second. He didn't just kill his dad for no reason. And this is actually a good opportunity to bring up the point that I was trying to illustrate before. Right? The conflict of Kylo Ren is that he is trying to be something he's not. And he is being told that that's how to do it. He wants control, right? He wants stability. He wants a lot of shit that he doesn't even understand how to acquire. And that's his whole bit, and that's why he looks like a sniveling kind of whiny baby, because he's a little bit angsty like a teenager, and the way that he's aligned his desires, his objectives, with the parallels of a teenager who doesn't know how to be a human. He kills his father, spoilers, because
say that every time,
he is still attached to his father. He kills his father because he's trying to cut himself off from the light side. And he can still feel himself not being able to fully commit because Snoke is so deep in this dude's fucking brain that Snoke has him convinced that any kind of sense of sentimentality and light in his heart is weakness, right? This is a man suffering from toxic masculinity, and you're gonna come out of nowhere and say he killed his dad for no reason?
I didn't say he didn't kill his dad for no reason. I said it didn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
I think
it
should have been written better.
They did not build up the character. They did not build up the character enough for that moment to have the right weight behind it. If they did that in episode 9, I might be more on your side. They did it in episode 1 where I've just seen without too much knowledge about this character in just episode 7, I'm still thinking he's a whiny bitch, and he just kills his dad. I'm like, well, okay, well, Han Solo's dead. Like, that's what I care about in this scene. I don't care about you. I don't care about your decision because I don't know you as a character. All I see is this, and I don't like what I'm seeing. So, if they... Okay, I guess what I'm saying is that, if you're right, and if they sense that they built him and they wrote him better, then I might be more on your side. But what we were given, I am not happy.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I just wanted to had to put my foot down for my man Kylo out here, all right? Because, I'm just saying.
Whatever.
I'm just saying.
All right.
Verdict?
Verdict? Just, again, I'm overrated. You have to question mine?
I think he is okay. Closing argument. Yes,
Closing
no.
argument.
I think he is as rated as he should have been because of the writing.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Well, if they remake 7, 8, 9, here we go. Second chance. Let's go.
You want to get it? You want to get in some heavy shit? How about Obi-Wan Kenobi?
The next one, yes.
How about Obi-Wan Kenobi? Tell me about how you think he's not overrated.
Okay. I'm curious now what you're thinking. All right. We all know Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was introduced in 4, 5, and 6. He was this wise mentor, became a Force ghost, which we really didn't know the significance of at the time. And he teaches Luke Skywalker alongside with Yoda on the Force. He kind of helps revive the Jedi later on, by obviously imparting the wisdom of the Force and the knowledge of the Force onto Luke Skywalker, and ultimately, I guess, helping bring Anakin back to the light side.
Right.
Then he comes in as Ewan McGregor, talented actor, as a 15-year-old, 18-year-old kid in episode 1, and he's the apprentice to Qui-Gon Jinn, which is a lot to be said of in and of itself. Then he becomes the teacher of Anakin and a big brother figure. he's headstrong at first, but but you see his progression to become a more wise and a little more intellectual, through his years. It leads, and this is what I'm talking about. This character, you've seen it built up, and this is a climactic end to a trilogy. You see his climactic fight with Darth Vader on Mustafar, and that holds weight. Yes, did it go on 20 minutes longer than it should have? Yes, but the emotion was there. He's not the wisest Jedi. He's not the strongest Jedi, but he has some traits that are notable, like Mace Windu calling him the literal master of Surisu, which is the total defensive lightsaber fighting style. He's a main character in the Clone Wars. He's about to get his own series. Is he overrated or is he not? And I'm gonna just go ahead straight strong, like I've been doing with every one of these. I don't think he is. I don't think he's not. Wait, he is not overrated. Let me say this in a way that is not. So full disclosure, I'm a little bit of a fanboy, and I know that my argument's gonna be biased because I'm not a fanboy of who we've talked about so far. And so, does my word carry as much weight as it does with the other ones? I don't know. I'm a little biased, but I like him because he's flawed. They don't what I know of the character, when I've seen the character, is that he's not perfect. People don't try to make him perfect. They don't try to make him this most powerful, ultimate Jedi force wielding, warrior. He's just a guy, and he has his flaws, and you see these flaws, and they just make him more human, and that's why I just fall in love with this character. What is your argument? Because, I swear to God, if it's not, we've talked about this. If it is not, he is not overrated. If you say he's overrated, we're gonna have words.
All right. So we look at the series, right? From his inception as Old Ben, and then later as we discover Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then later as we discover the weight of his being Obi-Wan Kenobi and the weight of his position in his first appearance, right? As time goes on, we begin to understand more about how Obi-Wan Kenobi got to where he was and all the things he's gone through. We start to see a picture of a Jedi who's pretty cool. I apologize. My cat's just charged through a large pile of cardboard next to me, and one of them burned out on the carpet. So if I have to mute myself, I'll let you know that I'm not about to.
Well, I'll carry this conversation by myself.
We see, just mute, entertain them, mute. And
oh no, Ian had to step away. So for the next hour, I'll talk about why Kenobi is great.
No, I think Obi-Wan Kenobi, given his legacy, is another similarly deserving character. I don't think that I disagree with people who admire the shit out of Obi-Wan Kenobi, the character, and the legacy of Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think that no matter where you look at Obi-Wan Kenobi, his character is one of the most consistent. Mm-hmm. And that's not easy to do in writing. So just as the appreciation there, he's always been him. There is no surprise twists with what you were talking about with Darth Maul earlier. There's no deficiencies in relatability, similar to what Kylo, in my experience, kind of suffers from. Obi-Wan Kenobi, though, is a tough one for me to say that he's underrated because, I think by the purest definition, he most certainly isn't. He's a tremendous part of the franchise. He's maybe understated, as a component of the franchise. He's not this great big bombastic character. He's not the big crowd favorite that has all of the toy deals and everything. But that doesn't mean that he's not that doesn't mean he's underrated. I think that he's in a similar spot to me as what Kylo Ren was, but from a different perspective in that he got what he deserved, right? I think Obi-Wan Kenobi gets the recognition he deserves. I think that he's not one of the he's one of the main characters, but he's not like the protagonist, right? The stories aren't always about him. He's a supporting character at the end of the day, and he's so close to the main story that arguably he's deserving of a lot more attention than that. But I don't think that that means that he's due more respect or recognition than what he's gotten. I don't think that he's being given too much either.
Yeah,
You know?
so, well, I guess jumping in, it's not if the characters are overrated or underrated, it's just if they're overrated or if they're not. And so, like, obviously, I think that you, like, I'm with you where I'm like, I think he's getting, what he deserves. And I'm going to argue a little bit about what you said. You said that like, yeah, he is not the most, like, out there character or, whatever, but, like, that's what's so endearing about him is that he isn't the chosen one, because we see that a lot in this series. If you haven't noticed, he isn't the chosen one. He isn't Luke Skywalker. He isn't the last of the Jedi. He isn't, the chosen one sought to bring balance to the Force. He isn't the oldest and wisest Jedi. He's not Mace Windu, who has like this weird, a dark light side conflict that helped him grow as a character. He's not. He's not all these things. He's just a guy, and like he's such a relatable guy, and he has such human emotions and human character development and human just everything about him. He's someone that like you look at and you're like, if he's a Jedi, I can be a Jedi too. It's not like, oh well, I'm not the chosen one, so like I guess I'll just like not strive to be anything. Like he really is just like a little inspirational on his own, just for being a guy, and like that's something that you don't really see in fantasy a lot because it's always like the apocalypse. It's always the war to end all wars. It's just you need the commonplace people to make the extraordinary be that extraordinary. Because if everyone's extraordinary, that just means they're ordinary. But you have that one ordinary guy, you have that a handful of really well written ordinary guys. They can be great characters because they don't have to be extraordinary because they help as a counterpoint be or they help as a counterpart for the extraordinary people to be truly extraordinary, and you see that with Anakin, and you see that with Obi-Wan, and it's just a beautiful thing.
So
As a side note, really quick,
yeah,
I did want to
yeah, yeah.
say, I do like Obi Wan as a character. I am more of a fanboy of young Obi Wan Kenobi. He is personally my favorite Jedi, more so than old Obi Wan Kenobi.
Hmm.
So
Mm.
just throwing that out there. I don't know if there's like much of a difference. I know that like in my mind there's a little bit of a difference because he does change characters in that 20 years, in exile, watching over Luke Skywalker. And he's not that like witty, snarky, having like great banter with this guy. He's like he's older, he's wizened, he's been through such traumatic events, and he's kind of come out the other side slightly changed. And I don't dislike it, but I like the headstrong Obi Wan Kenobi, where uh, Anakin, or he's talking to Anakin in the beginning of episode 2, and he's like, your force senses aren't developed enough to, know what's going on in that room. Like this is a dangerous thing you're putting Padme through. And Anakin goes, and oh, yours is, and he goes, possibly. Like that's such a great answer, not saying that he's such a much better Jedi or Force user than Anakin is. He's not saying that like, oh, I suck. He's just kind of like that snarky possibly, but I know more than you, so shut up, Padawan. I don't know. Such a great answer, and that's like one of my favorite scenes of him. But anyway,
He's. I feel like the thing that is likable about him is a lot of the same stuff that is likable about the Green Lantern.
I
You
know
know,
nothing about Green Lantern.
where you have a character whose entire relatable context is that they are courageous and they're smart, but they're even and fair. That they have feelings, but they're responsible and know how to have a mastery over them. That they care about others and are compassionate, but can be strong and affirmative. They're not one dimensional people. But the flaws that they have aren't flaws that are tangible in the real world. They're not drug addicts. They're not weak to the wiles of their vices.
Yeah,
the things that they have that are problems are that they are mild mannered golden retrievers who periodically lose their ball and get their heart broken. And uh, I think that's about as scathing as an indictment as I'm capable of giving to Obi-Wan, because while you're talking about how this guy is like an inspirational figure, right? Like, okay, I
Yeah.
totally get it. I can think about all the people in my life who have resonated with Obi-Wan, and about the people that they also resonate with outside of Obi-Wan. And I can see this trend, and I'm like, cool. What exactly are Obi-Wan's downsides? You know, what are his weaknesses? Is it that he loved Anakin as a brother and became too attached? How is that a weakness? Is it that
So
he wasn't willing to be stronger? Okay, but that's also his entire character, where he's decided that the proper thing to do is to be fair rather than to take things and do things the way he wants. Like, this guy isn't bad. He's not one dimensional,
mhm.
like I said. I think he's one of the most consistently written characters across all of the fiction, and that is good. And I think that he has a staying power. He has a staying power, excuse me, in the Star Wars universe that will always carry the reputation of Obi-Wan fucking Kenobi, right?
Yes.
But really, like, that doesn't make him under. Sorry, not under. That doesn't. I don't think that. I don't think that makes him overrated. I think that he gets more than enough attention. I think he gets more than enough rates,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
So, waiting patiently for my turn, I'm gonna argue a little bit. As as I want. So, you say that these kind of golden retriever characters don't have like real world problems. Obviously, they're not subjected to their vices. You need, unfortunately, in the context especially of George Lucas's Star Wars, is that it's a fantasy, but it's also meant for kids. So you can't really have that much vice going on. You can't really have that many real world problems because that's not the target audience. The target audience isn't to have this for adults who are know what the world is like and they know what people are going through. It's not to teach kids, hey, this is what the real world is like. It's a softer version of that. And so that's where I think it's a little unfair to judge Obi-Wan Kenobi in that capacity. But also, and you kind of mentioned the like he how he saw Anakin as a brother and didn't really see his downfall. That is something that you can very easily translate over to real world problems where you see these people who are going down a path, either becoming an alcoholic or having a drug problem or in a bad relationship, but or like you're in a bad relationship with them, but you care for them so much that you're willing or you're just negligible to those bad traits when in reality you should see them for what they are, not what you think they are, and do something about it. And that's what episode 3 is about, is because he was so negligible about seeing what Anakin had become that when it finally hit him, he's like, oh my god, I'm part of the problem. And I know this wasn't in the movies, but if you take into account the Clone Wars TV series, he very well could have pieced together everything that happened between episodes 2 and 3. He could have predicted and seen the downfall of Anakin because he knew that not only was Anakin close friends with Padme, he knew there's a specific scene where Anakin is using Rex's gear to call Padme on a hologram and they're talking and Padme's pregnant. Like, so obviously they had been married and they had spent time together. So clearly that's not something that they can hide very well. When Kenobi kind of goes looking for Anakin, he runs into Rex and he's like, "Oh, where's Anakin?" And Rex is like, "Oh, he's spot checking my gear," like some BS excuse. And he goes, "Oh, okay. Tell him to find me when he's ready, and tell him to tell Padme I say hi." He is fully aware that they have a close friendship, and possibly if he really tried to do anything about it, could have dug further and found out and kind of like tried to do something differently than when he fully came to terms with the realization and he confronted Padme in episode 3 and it's like, Anakin's the father, isn't he? Like, that's a very real world character flaw, and just because it's not, exaggerated to the point of real world problems as the horrors that the real world has, this is a fantasy. This is supposed to be something lighter and something more enjoyable, something maybe not cathartic, but to get your worries away from the real world and kind of just lose yourself in the moment.
So you're saying that his flaw is being compassionate. Right, then that's the point that I'm getting at, is that, like, his flaw, the part when he realizes that he's done something bad, is when he fucking trusted somebody who he thought he could trust, who went behind his back, doing things he shouldn't have been, and then decided to give that person the benefit of the doubt because he cares about them. Like, that's not a flaw. That's this man, young Obi-Wan Kenobi, before he learns about the world at large and has to be a little more, tough. Young Obi-Wan Kenobi's entire jam is that he is arguably the perfect Jedi. Like, that's it.
Wait.
And his flaw is that he did something un-Jedi-like, which is like saying that the kid who gets straight A's shouldn't feel bad for getting a B plus. Like, okay, he trusted somebody who was doing genuinely shitty things, like premeditated murder and sleeping with a lady who had very, very, very powerful connections to the Senate. This man, like, he's like a lawful good paladin. He did nothing wrong. And then when something happened, it happened to him. And then he recognized his responsibility. And he says, oh shit, I could have done if I had just looked into it, and self-flagellates and feels bad because he thinks that he was responsible for something that he technically wasn't responsible for. If anything, he's guilty of putting his emotional state into somebody else. The thing that he does bad is that he's taking responsibility for somebody else's shitty actions. And then what does he do? When he grows older, he learns to accept it and is like, actually, you know what? You're right. Your father turned to the dark side. It wasn't my fault, even though I feel like I could have done something better, and I've moved on. He's perfect, Chris. He's a perfect man.
What are you arguing?
There's a reason why so many people like science fiction post Star Wars, post those kind of perfect man tropes that are like Firefly, where everybody's actually just shitty people. Like, it's because of this dude, because of the people like that, because how common this kind of, like,
this is a weird argument.
This light in the dark.
This is a weird argument. You're saying that he's a perfect man and that's why he's, like, not, like, great. I'm saying he's not perfect and that's why he is great.
Are we equating the idea of somebody being great and worthy as a character to them being a perfect depiction of an ideology? Because I think that a good character is somebody who has more personality than I'm good all the time and sometimes snarky, and feel bad because my friend did something terrible, and because I feel responsible for him, I feel like I let him down.
So there's also...
Like, that's not... If you're coming out here trying to say that he has a lot of depth, point to the points of depth in his life that aren't the time he was sexually frustrated with the literal Queen of Mandalore, and the time when he had to choose whether he was going to fight or die when fighting against his now long-lost Padawan.
Well, okay, whatever. He didn't have to confront Anakin or Vader, but he chose to. But anyway, like...
He chose to both times. At the end of episode 3 and when he's...
and 4, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Both times he chose to do the thing.
So here's the thing also. Like, we're arguing a lot about episode 3 Kenobi. Like, 1 and 2 is, like, he is headstrong and he's not knowledgeable and he's not very wise, you know? Like, he has to go to... He goes to literal children to get an answer to a problem that he cannot solve. You know, he goes to Yoda, the wisest person he knows, and he goes, Yoda, the star charts. I'm trying to find this system. The star charts say they don't exist. What happened? And Yoda is just like, foolish you are to think that I would have the answer. And he goes, all right, children, what's the answer? And they're like, and they give him the answer, and he goes, how brilliant a child's mind is. Like there's more to it. Like he relies on other people. I think that's another thing is like he relies on other people. Like Anakin.
Is that a good thing? His relying on other people is a good thing. Like that's part of my argument is that like he's a healthy, well-adjusted human being.
Yeah, but I'm losing the argument here. Okay, whatever. I don't
All
think
I'm saying, you can like him.
Okay.
I'm not saying he's overrated. I think he
Okay.
receives precisely the amount of ratedness that he's supposed to.
Okay. Okay. Oof. Okay.
Bam, bam.
All right, moving on.
So hold on, we've been going for a little bit. How are you doing?
Yes. I can keep going.
Okay.
So I know. Well, we've got one person left on our list that I want to hit
Mhm.
up. Then we have a
This won't be fast for me, I promise.
an extra person that if we have time we'll get to. But I don't want to ruin it because I don't want to raise hopes.
Yeah,
But
right.
All right. So last person that I have on the list we're going to talk through is Han Solo. Han Solo. He's a scoundrel with the gold of heart. He's Leia's love
Heart of gold.
interest. What'd you say? Heart of gold?
Yeah.
What'd I say? Gold of heart?
You did. You said gold of heart.
Wow, okay. Sometimes I wonder. I need help.
I got you, fam.
It's played by Harrison Ford, and I think that was like toward the beginning of Harrison Ford's career. So at the time, it was like, oh, cool, it's a cool actor. But then, like in retrospect, looking back, you're like, oh shit, it's Harrison Ford. And like even talks about like George Lucas in the scenes of episode like 4, the making of like the original trilogy. He talks big, but he doesn't always know what he's talking about. Literally like the joke with the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs isn't because they're saying that was a factual thing you could do. It was saying that like Han Solo, even though he says he's a pilot, he's a dumbass. He doesn't know what he's doing. He fakes it to make it, and that's entire. It's like a large part of his persona, especially like early on. And in one of my favorite scenes, when someone finally explained it to me, because Han Solo was a character, I was like, okay, he did good, but I didn't really, care too much about him. I liked him in these movies, but I didn't really want to. He wasn't my favorite character, but he very quickly became one of my favorite characters when someone explained this scene to me. Which is in episode 5. They're on the Cloud City, and they go to dinner with Lando Calrissian, and they open the door, and Darth Vader's there. Any typical hero, like Luke Skywalker or Anakin back in his heyday, Kenobi, anyone would have gone, Leia, get back! Or they're like, Lando, you betrayed me, how could you? Or like, oh crap, it's Darth Vader, we gotta do something. He doesn't say a damn word. He pulls his gun, he just starts shooting. He's like, this is my chance to end the Lord of the Sith, and I gotta do something about it. He just takes his gun, he starts shooting, and it shows a little bit more about badass, like how Darth Vader is, where he just starts deflecting bolts with his hand, and he just rips the gun out, and he's like,
right.
We would be pleased if you would join it. Like, so, that's, when someone pointed out that scene to me, that he very quickly became one of my, like, favorite characters in the original trilogy. And then, of course, he had his own, standalone movie, which kind of explained a little bit about his origin and how he, like, where he's from, how he kind of became owner of the Millennium Falcon, how he met Chewie, and then how he kind of became this, like, scoundrel, smuggler kind of guy, but he's still good at heart. So, I'm going to let you go first. Do you think he's overrated? Do you think he is perfectly rated, or do you think he's underrated? Do you think he's not been shown enough? I'm ignoring episode 7. Don't mind me.
Nobody really. I do not have any friends that partake of Star Wars that pay attention to the Solo movie. And that's not. I just want to be fair, right? It's not the actor's fault. It's again one of these long strings of movies that I have a problem with. Where like it's frenetic and the scenes are just stitched together and there's like formulaic comedic drops and tropey nonsense and like like they made the movie as a throwaway. They made a throwaway, right? I think the entire cast of the
Aspect,
movie
yeah.
probably deserves to go and like have a career outside of that movie, and like they deserve to be successful and great people,
Cough,
and to
cough,
never have
Daenerys
somebody
Stormborn.
ask about their time when they worked on this movie. Is all I'm saying.
Uh,
I think Han Solo,
Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford. I like Harrison Ford. I just
Cough,
think that
cough.
Han Solo's like a
Not
little like
Harrison. Oh, not Harrison Ford. Shit. Cough, cough,
what?
Woody Allen. Cough, cough, Daenerys Targaryen. I was thinking Woody Allison. Fuck, I can't do word. I can't do
I don't
names.
even know what you're talking about. Hold on. What are you trying to say right
The
now?
guy, like, you said, like they deserve careers outside of this movie, and
Oh,
there's
okay, gotcha.
Daenerys Stormborn, or the actress Emily something. I can't think of her last name. And then
No, yeah, I
there's
know what you mean.
Woody Harrelson. Woody Harrelson, the guy who taught.
I
The guy who taught, you know, who gave Solo his gun.
oh, I know you're talking about
Yeah, him. Whatever.
him.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Anywho,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Hear me out. People that love this man, eh. People that don't, they should probably appreciate a little more. I think he's overrated. I think
Ooh,
that
okay.
Han Solo, like I said, I don't have like a whole lot of dialogue to exchange about Han Solo.
Yeah.
I like him because I mean, I just like Harrison Ford. like,
Yeah.
like yes, if you come to me and says and you say, do you think Harrison Ford in Star Wars was underrated or overrated? I would say, oh, underrated. But if you ask me about Han Solo the person, I would say overrated. Han Solo the person,
Ooh,
eh,
okay.
a
All right.
scruffy-headed nerf herder. He shows up, he's
He,
charming, he's witty, kind of.
I love you.
He's a
I know.
scallywag. Yeah, right, and that's it. It, I think Han Solo is overrated. I fucking love Harrison Ford though. So like
Okay.
Harrison Ford, if you're out there, God bless you, man.
Yeah, he's yeah. Sure. Of all Star Wars actors, he'll be listening to this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's a diehard fan. He listens to everything his fans make.
I think he couldn't care less. I think there was an interview where he was, or like it was like a Lucasfilm like convention or something like that, and he was like waiting for people to ask him about other movies, and they just kept asking about like what's Han Solo's favorite food, and Harrison Ford's like I don't give a shit. Move on, something else. Like this was one role I had to take back in the '70s. Please
I'd
move
be
on.
pretty I'd be pretty upset if people thought of my career that way too, to be honest.
Yeah, because even like Lucasfilm did do Indiana Jones too, so at least Lucasfilm had six movies with him.
Right.
So yeah, whatever. All right, I don't think he's overrated. I don't think he's underrated. I think he's perfectly rated. I enjoy the non like linear like if it doesn't have a number associated with it, episodes 1 through 9, like
Mm.
A Rogue One or the Solo movie. I think they're fine. I enjoyed myself. I didn't read too much into it. It's when like you start saying, "Oh, this is the main storyline. This is the main arc that you should be paying attention to." When it's not, when it doesn't meet my expectations, that's when I get a little annoyed. That's why I like looking at like 7, 8, 9. That's why I get a little annoyed with it. Versus the Solo movie, where I'm like, yeah, there were faults, but like, it was a throwaway. I enjoyed the throwaway for being what it was, and then moving on. You
Mm.
know,
Mm.
but I also don't care. I like Han Solo, but I'm not passionate enough about him to argue like we did Kenobi.
Right.
So,
Right.
do you
No, I mean,
want
that's
to
fair. Okay. Well, so we've been
dig
going
back
for a
into
minute.
this? Yeah,
It's a little late for us.
it's a little late.
Um, I feel like
I think we
we
can.
would both have a really long dialogue about our secret contributor here, our final guy on our list.
You
So
know
how
what?
do you feel?
I don't think so. I think I can
No?
go. I think I can
Okay.
go through this, and then we can get to the
Okay.
end, and then like based on what I have gone over, I think we can come to a pretty
Yeah.
close,
Yeah.
pretty quick conclusion. How do you
Right.
feel?
I am going to say a lot of the similar stuff I've said before about this guy already. So I might be able to
Mm,
go quick, but we
yeah.
might get into it. We might start a back and forth.
All right. Well, you know
So
what?
let's give it a
Just to
shot.
go ahead and go in this, and like,
Yeah.
and the reason is someone who we've danced around for maybe both episodes now. I know we talked about him a little bit in episode 1. Is Darth Revan or Jedi Knight Revan?
Mm-hmm.
Massive fan favorite. Like, he is not never been made canonical. He was supposed to make a cameo appearance in the Clone Wars TV show as like a Force Ghost, but he never made it. So he's not yet seen his limelight in any type of Lucasfilm, or I guess Disney and what Lucasfilm did on the movies or TV series. But he has had a couple of games about him, and obviously extended lore about him. But I'm going to run through this because we're actually neither of us were really too knowledgeable about him, and so I'm just going to run through some of the like highlights of what I found
Yeah.
and see where we kind of land
Educate
after
me.
this.
Educate me. I'm here for this.
So my first impression of him obviously is going to be that he is edgy for edge's sake. It's just really like someone who has gone from the light side to the dark side to the light side again without my having the full story. It's really hard for me to get behind this character. How it happens with Anakin, I see it over 6 movies, so I'm invested and I realize and I understand the transitions back and forth, but I don't have that with Darth Revan, so that's why I fall there immediately when I kind of read about him or hear about him.
Mm-hmm.
Which can be argued that if he's canon or not, because we've talked about how canon works, and we haven't really we haven't really chosen where we've fallen on that subject, but we will not, because he's only again, as I said, only existed in video games and books. He uses a red and purple lightsaber, which by using a purple lightsaber, he diminishes Mace's uniqueness in being the only Jedi to have a purple lightsaber, but even canonically to have the only like non blue, green, or red. And as I said, just make a cameo. But all right, backstory. I'm going to run through these really quick. I've got like 10, 15 points.
Sure.
So he started off as a talented Jedi. He quickly rose to be a prominent, master. I either joins the Jedi Council or is about to join the Jedi Council. Then the Mandalorian Wars break out, and he sees this senseless bloodshed and slaughter, and he thinks the Jedi, the Keepers of the Peace, should intervene, and the Jedi Council says no. So he rounds up some support, he gets a group of Jedi, and he goes anyway, alright? So he goes, he helps kind of quell the Mandalorian Wars and helps try to bring peace to the galaxy. Then during so he discovers that there's the Sith, or there's like this secret Sith empire in the like unknown regions, so kind of like past known space, or at least as the Old Republic would call known space.
Yeah.
So he goes there with his friend and I think his apprentice at the time. I think his name was Alec, and they disappear. Just straight up disappear. They're gone for like 10 years, something like that. Next time he appears, he is a full-on Sith Lord. He is the Sith Lord with his apprentice, who he went with, as Darth Malak. He is Darth Revan at this point. And he plunges the galaxy into the Jedi Civil War. He leads the Sith in the fight against the Jedi, and just right off the bat, huge monumental character in shaping the history of Star Wars.
Right.
He is betrayed by Malak, as Sith do. That Malak wants his position and his power, and he believes that he's learned everything he could from Revan. So he attempts to blow up Revan's ship while a rescue squad was there to try to help kind of rescue Revan, including one of Revan's either previous apprentices or old friends. Again, there's a lot of like sketchy details, so sorry if they're not 100% correct. Bastilla Shan. So Bastilla Shan is caught on the ship as well, and they both get kind of blown up partially, but they like crash land, and in doing so, in an effort to save herself and to save Revan, she uses the Force to kind of protect them both and creates a Force bond. So I think this is one, if not the only, Force bond that we've seen in Star Wars. And it's like this weird like connection emotionally, mentally, even physically, where like if one person's dead or hurt, the other person will feel it. But by being betrayed and by crash landing, Revan actually loses his memory, and so he knows that he's like Force sensitive. He's here with this Force bond with Bastilla Shan, but he doesn't really know what's happening. And so the Jedi Council and Shan both kind of imbue their ideal character into Revan by converting him into this incredibly loyal to the Republic Jedi. That way they can kind of start using his power again to defeat Malak. So they go, and in their exploits, Shan is eventually captured and then turned to the dark side by Malik and she becomes his apprentice. And when Revan goes to rescue her, he confronts them. He is forced with the realization that he was a Sith at some point. He rejects it. He rejects his past self and the dark side, the seduction of the dark side. He is able to convert Shan back to the light side and is able to defeat Malik.
Yeah.
So then they go home happily ever after. They fall in love. They get married. They have a kid. But Revan is haunted by the memories of this true Sith Empire that's out there that threatens the Old Republic. So he leaves single mother Bastilla Shan to go fight and dismantle the true Sith Empire, and he disappears for the second time. And he's thought to be dead at some point. And, Shan and the Old Republic both kind of agree that, like, okay, he's not coming back this time. And they kind of pronounce him dead. A lot of Siths that he fights, a lot of fighting, a lot of Sith assassins, a lot of just names I don't recognize, so I'm not going to go over. And in doing so, he finds this, like, weird scientific, like, force, temple, like, laboratory where he, in confronting the Sith Emperor, gets put into a stasis for 300 years.
As you do.
Sure. He's human. He's human, by the way. So it's just a mask. So he surprisingly doesn't age, I guess. But he has no concept of time, no concept of like hunger or emotion or anything. He's basically one with the Force, but his physical body is just not aging for some reason or doesn't need food for some reason. Anyway, 300 years pass. The Great Galactic War starts. The True Sith Empire is launching war and is trying to fully take over the Republic. Since he is cognizant of kind of what's happening through the Force, he's able to somehow, I guess, use the Force to convince the evil Emperor that peace is the best way. I guess he's able to do that, sure. But by doing so, I think he makes the Emperor aware that he still is there and still is powerful. At some point, he's finally freed from his stasis. And an assassination squad by the Emperor kind of comes and attempts to kill him. But just before he disappears in a flash of light, it's kind of unexplained. Some say that he becomes one with the Force. Some say he dies and, of course, kind of transcends to this either Force ghost or just kind of lets himself become one with the universe again. Sure, I guess, whatever. Way to steal from Obi-Wan Kenobi. But then later, at some point, I guess, in those 300 years, he has a cult named after him, as all things do. You just get trapped for 300 years, you have a cult named after you. Sure.
Like you do.
And they're called the Order of Revan. And then, after the flash of light, so when he supposedly actually dies, kinetically dies, he later appears as a hologram, and he takes control of the cult, and he threatens to destroy the Republic and destroy the Empire. What I read, it didn't really seem that he wanted to rule it or replace it with anything. He just wanted to destroy it. So I guess he's back to Darth Revan. So he's made the swap 4 times now. And then I found nothing. Next we see of him, he's dead. He dies. He's dead. So I guess he was unsuccessful. Maybe, I guess, whatever. And in the legacy portion of the huge readings that I did, that he dies and his light side self goes and becomes one with the Force, but his dark side self that was still there kind of clings to the physical world. It's like, no, I'm still here, rawr, I'm evil. And through teaching the Sith wisdom and the Sith philosophy and powers, he imparts from the dark side Revan onto Darth Bane, who eventually uses all of this to create the Rule of 2. And that is kind of the end of what I was able to see is the main life points of Darth Revan. So obviously, with taken in full respect, he is massively influential of the story and of the history and the lore. He's got that conflict. He's got depth there, I guess. I guess if you played the games and read the movie or read the books, then you would know more about that. I just don't care. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, like,
I yeah, sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
nah. I
Finish
just
your
like
thing.
it's like having not played the Knights of the Old Republic game, which I need to. Which Disney, please, for the love of God, remake. Update and remake 1 and 2. I'll play the shit out of them. But reading into this person and just kind of reading like their story, which there was a lot of shit by the way. Just reading into it, it's just not something that I care about now. If I read about it, maybe, but I just think based on his life, he seems a little overhyped. What do you think?
I mean, like I said before, I don't have a whole lot to talk about regarding
Yeah,
this guy. I
yeah,
think he's a big, powerful big boy, and that's the end of his fucking bit. I think that,
yeah.
like, I have played enough Dungeons and Dragons to know, calling out certain nerds here out of the audience, you can fucking flame me if you want. The guys that like Revan are the guys that play rogues for the DPS. Boom. The guys that like Revan are the people that play blue black in Magic the Gathering because they think that making somebody else play in a way that isn't fun for them is fun for them. Boom. Revan is boring, dude. He's just a big, strong guy. Like, yes, you need big parts of big personalities to move big parts of history, right? If you have
Mm-hmm.
somebody who you want to upset the foundation of the balance of the force, of force wielders in the universe, eventually you're going to have some series of people or some person at the center of that. Like we've literally seen it in our own history as human beings. Like you have powerful dictators, you have kings, and you have warlords, and shit, man. Like I'm not against the guy for being super strong. When your claim to fame is that you are super strong and there's not really a whole lot of an explanation about why, you're just that strong, and that's the thing that's really cool. Like there's it's not even the same as like the One Punch Man anime, right? Where like the funny bit is that he's the strongest thing ever, but he's also like kind of depressed and doesn't care about anything. And the
Yeah,
combination of those two things are like unexpected, and the humor behind how they present somebody functioning in that world is also unexpected and funny. Revan doesn't even have that going on, right? Revan is just like, I'm a big, strong guy. I was good and then I was bad. But then I lost my memories and I became good again. But then I became bad. Like,
yeah,
whatever. Whatever. That's not. From a high level, it doesn't sound like good writing. From the low levels, when the actual scripts were progressing, I'm certain that somebody had a great, like a huge, expansive world and all this George R. Martin esque uh, 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 the complexity. That's what I'm looking
yeah.
for. Complexity in their plot and the machinations in execution. Overrated.
Yeah, I feel bad.
Overrated.
I feel bad just because we're not the most knowledgeable when it comes to this, but like from a high point of view, yeah, it just doesn't seem good. Like it's again, it's one of those things that like you need to there needs to be flaws for a character to have depth, and if they don't have flaws, then you have Superman and you can like Superman, but I just don't care because
Right.
I'm like he's never in danger, he's never in peril. I don't have to ever like fear for him, and like it's just like that. It becomes boring because I know how everything's gonna end, and with him, like I don't. I just yeah. He's literally in stasis for 300 years. He's a human who has lived over 300 years, and he's the Jedi version. He is a Star Wars version of Jesus.
I think he
What
was a
what?
savior. I
Sorry.
think he's a bad guy the entire time, or more or less, he's an antagonist the entire time, right? Like
I mean, for half his life, he's a
he's
good
not.
guy. At least
Is
from
it
what I've seen.
is his thing about being the revolutionary?
I don't know. He's got a cult after him. I don't know.
I
Like I don't
think
know.
that,
See, that's why I don't.
okay. That's a bit. Let's reel that back a little bit. Let's
We're
there's
real.
no association we're trying to make here.
There's not, but I'm saying that he is like highly charismatic. He's able to, while in stasis or while believed to be dead, he still moves people to believe in him, to believe that he is not holier, but like not even godlier, but he is larger than he is. And there are some quotes that I saw that he doesn't really buy into that. He's just like, I am a man. Like, that's all I am. Like, I am here and I'm doing this thing. That's all it is. So he is more humble, but he's still. I don't know.
There's nothing to glom onto. There's nothing to
But
be emotionally attached to about him. There's nothing
yeah,
to
from a high
be
view.
inspired by. He just has done, like, being inspired by Revan is like being inspired by Napoleon. It's like he did a lot of really crazy stuff. Right on, good for him.
But the end of his life,
That's the no. That's as shallow as the relationship
yeah,
gets. There's nothing else. Like, yeah, I admire your accomplishments, sir. Um,
yeah.
for the sake of consistency, I'm gonna rag on 40k again. 40k has a lot of people that are like Revan.
Hmm.
Warhammer 40k has a established history of putting big, powerful men with very non-complex personalities in positions to do stuff, and then you have to deal with how the thing that was so terrible was the tragedy of them making the hard choice. Like, you know, but that's also kind of their brand. The God Emperor of Mankind in Warhammer 40k strikes some of these tropes that you're describing with Revan, where it's like, I'm a big person, and I show up and I do a lot of big deal stuff, and I'm so powerful nobody can stop me. But I was betrayed by my confidant, who was also super powerful and thought that they could do it better. Right? Like, I've literally seen the story of Revan before, and it was also just as uninteresting. The most interesting component of the Emperor of Mankind in 40k is that the Emperor of Mankind in 40k is depicted as so legendary. He's so powerful, so wise, so intelligent, so everything, that he thinks of himself so far beyond the people that he rules that he literally can't see how the cost of maintaining his empire and the cost of building his empire and the cost on his sons that he creates in a way I won't explain, uh,
Weird.
is actually making life for all of humanity across the entire known universe worse. Right? Like, he is so far ahead of himself, and he's so full of himself that, like, his downfall is his ego and his confidence in himself and his confidence in his empire and his industry. And ultimately, it ends up not really being his downfall as much as it is just like a component of why he didn't think anything bad was going to happen. You could argue that's part of his downfall. I'm not here to debate that shit.
Hmm.
This man, Revan,
Yeah.
you're not. He doesn't even have that going for him, right?
Yeah.
Like, the most important thing about him is that he was on the bad side and then the good side, and then had family, and
So,
then
yeah.
bad side. Like, that's even more boring than the 40
Yeah.
than the 40k guy. Like, come on.
So I will say, though, we are looking at a fraction of a fraction of this man's story, and I think the game goes up until he's in stasis for 300 years. I think it starts getting into extended lore, so that's kind of that fan fictiony, like, but he's my favorite character. I don't want him to die yet. So what if he's in stasis and then he can do all these other cool things while he's in stasis? I think that's I think where he kind of falls, and then eventually they're like, okay, well, he has to die. Like, he cannot be a human that lives forever. But what if he goes, whatever. So I will say that, like, we just we're seeing through a very, very small lens, a very, very focused in lens, and so that's why we're not gonna have the most educated answer, but it's like a first take of this. It's just that's where we kind of land, and it's kind of unfortunate because it's so hyped up. I kind of got excited for him, and then when I looked into him, I'm like, where's the good stuff? It's like
I
I
accept the burden of ignorance, and
yes,
if
yeah.
anybody wants to come at me for it, you're still wrong. Take that.
Again, it always goes back to like my favorite like skate when it comes to this is like, well, guess what? Who's got the podcast? Who's got your view? Huh?
Get wrecked.
All right, but I will say also, I want to ask this one last thing before we wrap up. Does this change anything for you? So technically, as I laid out, this was Revan's canonical life. In the game, you actually meet him when he has become a Jedi the second time. So you meet him trying to hunt down Darth Malik, not knowing who Darth Malik is. You try to hunt down Shan. You don't know who she is and what significance she has to Revan. And by hunting them out and then confronting them, you learn that he was a Jedi originally, then was transferred to the dark side along with his friend, then was betrayed and brought back to the light side, and that the woman he loves, Shan, uh, has this. I guess they would have known by now that he has the Force link with her, but how she went to save him, and then she ultimately fell to the dark side. So there's much more of a climactic realization about what the story holds. Does that have any change on what you think about this character? Like, is the way that it's presented in the game, if it was done right, could that change your perception of this character? Or if you only will ever look at him as like the top down, like looking at everything in his life and being like, I don't care how you put it, I still don't care.
If they were to do anything to address Revan and to put them into a series of like plot points where you interact with Revan and actually see Revan do physical things, I will wait until after that to say whether or not I have had my mind changed.
Okay.
Because right now, Revan's sum total contribution to the universe and asking about how like overrated or underrated Revan is to me is very much akin to reading, or no, here, let's think of a better example of watching the old Avatar The Last Airbender cartoons and then asking somebody, is Kyoshi underrated or overrated? Because like Kyoshi shows up and is a reference to the way things were in the past, and we know that she did some stuff that ended up impacting the present.
Mm-hmm.
We don't fucking know a thing about her. We don't know anything about her. We're not reading a textbook, and a history textbook doesn't teach us anything about a person.
She was really tall with really big feet.
Yeah, sure. Oh, no, there it is. Underrated and needs to be appreciated more. We need better representation of Kyoshi out in the... Which, as I understand it, I think has actually been toyed with, and I'd be interested in consuming, but only because they would be putting them in a real-world scenario for us to observe. Revan can do whatever he wants until I see him in my hands, in a game, in a fiction, in some form where he is like an actual person and has character and has dialogue or agency on the world. I'm not gonna care.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna care.
So let's do this. Let's do this. If the Old Republic show that Disney's producing is about Revan, because they haven't, at least what I saw, they haven't released too many details about it, so it could be, because they're trying to keep the secret of Revan. Or if they remaster KOTOR 1 and 2. Actually, right now, if you're lucky, you can get KOTOR on Steam for like $2. It's part of the summer Steam sale. You have it.
I already got that shit. I've had that. I had it back when it was on $2 like 10 years ago.
Ooh. Well then, let's do this. Let's do this. If hopefully in the near future they announce they're going to do KOTOR 1 and 2 remakes, or if at some point in the near future they say that they're going to make a Revan movie or show, let's revisit this topic. Let's have a whole episode about Revan.
And see whether or not the man's... If he holds up,
if he lives up to the hype. If he is the hype. Or if they don't do that, then, in a couple months, if we're still doing this, we'll just play KOTOR. We'll binge through it, and then we'll review the story after we play it separately. And see how we enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm down. I'd be down with that.
Okay. All right. Well, then with that, we have hit all our points. We have talked about who we think some of the more popular characters in Star Wars, which ones are overrated, which ones are underrated, and which ones get like kind of the exact, coverage that they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
I am super excited for Kenobi the show. Fuck you. Mm-hmm. And I really, really want to review that once that's done.
Yeah, for sure.
I really want to. Do you know how many episodes Bad Batch is going to be?
Not total. I don't know what the planned episode count is.
Okay, because I would like to review that once that's
They're
done.
getting close.
It seems like they're getting close. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think are they in episode 9? So 10 kind of might make sense.
Well, the plot feels like it's getting somewhere. Like they've established that there's now like a multi-episode
Yeah,
dramatic plot line.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
we'll see.
Well, anywho, when we have decided that that might be one of the episodes we do, I hope you guys enjoyed. Probably didn't. Hope you enjoyed our time, your time with us as we just kind of shit talk the characters you grew up with and love and idolize. And if we're wrong, tell us how we're wrong by commenting down below. Simple as that. Start the discussion. We'll check it. You know, we might respond. Who knows? Just see how it is. Prove to us who were right, who were wrong.
Right.
If there's anyone we didn't cover and that you want us to cover, again, let us know. And if there's any topics you want us to cover, let us know. I think that's that. Ian,
Sounds good.
it's pretty late for us, so go ahead and
Let's call
enjoy.
it.
We're gonna call it.
Mhm.
Go ahead and enjoy the rest of your night. Say hello to your cats for me, and I will do
I
so with
will.
mine.
I will.
And until next time, may the force be with you.
May the force be with you.